Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this Nautical Institute webinar on supporting and developing crew. I'm David Patraiko, the Director of Projects with the Nautical Institute, headquartered in London, and I'm being joined here by Captain Kuba Szymanski, who is the Secretary General of Intermanager. Welcome, Kuba.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, David.
Right. So just a few brief housekeeping guidance. The webinar will probably last about 30 to 40 minutes. It's going to be a discussion between Kuba and I, but we really would like your questions to come in. So if you can see in this little diagram here, you have a control panel, probably in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. It can compress or expand, and you do this little arrow up on the top to go between compression and expansion. Once it's expanded, you'll see that down on the menu, you have an option for questions. Feel free at any time to type in a question, submit it, and we'll try to get to it in due time. We're also going to be talking about some of the resources that the Nautical Institute has for supporting mariners, and those are summarized on a document that is available in the handout section. So if you look in that menu section, there's handouts and there's a PDF document that you can download. So crews, absolutely important. Without crews, the shipping would grind to a halt, world trade would grind to a halt, and as some people say, half the world would go hungry, the other half would freeze to death. And at the essence of this all is you guys, the crews of our ships. So the Nautical Institute and Intermanager both spend an awful lot of time and effort trying to support crews, both physically and educationally. Kuba is not just the Secretary General of Intermanager, but he is a great supporter of the Nautical Institute. He's a fellow of the Nautical Institute, and in fact, he's one of the board members of the Nautical Institute. So he knows a little bit about what we do. So we'll have that little chat. As you will guess by the name Captain Kuba Szymanski, he is a former mariner, a former captain, and it was interesting, Kuba, because I was just looking at your CV. And I noticed the similarities. We both graduated maritime academies in '85. We both went to sea. We both came ashore about the same time. We're both working on very similar projects. The only thing that I don't have is a doctoral. So Captain Doctor or Dr. Captain Kuba, something like that. And I suggest that we don't talk too much about sailing, otherwise we'll get definitely off the track, because that's one of our favorite subjects. Right, so Kuba, the question on everybody's lips is what is happening with crew repatriation. We've seen some horrible stories in the news, we've seen some wonderful stories in the news. We know that there's a lot of people who have been working on this, your organization included, with the IMO. Where are we with crew repatriation, and where do we have to go? So Kuba, over to you, please.
Thank you, David. Let me start with 23rd of March, where everybody got surprised. World went into the lockdown. And a lot of people were saying, okay, what will happen now? Because a lot of different parts of our life stopped. Shipping stopped as well? No, we have not. Shipping companies had to regroup, and it was very interesting for a lot of companies where we thought that we got emergency services provided and everything, and we did indeed. We were always very prepared for any emergency happening at sea. But all of a sudden, in some countries, and then as it progressed in many, many countries, we were having emergencies ashore. We were not allowed to go to the office. And it became apparent then, while marine superintendents, technical superintendents were prepared to work remotely, support staff, administration, purchasers did not have laptops, for example. So working from home was not that easy. They didn't have a setup and everything. So they needed to be prepared. And it took a few weeks. Now, you are thinking, Kuba, you were asked about the crew changes. Why are you talking about the office? Well, because somebody has to do that. Somebody has to organize it. Somebody has to be prepared to overcome challenges. So are crew changes happening? David, you said that we are reading something in newspaper, then we are full of Facebook, social media, and you may be under impression that very little is happening. When you read cruise ships, or seafarers basically stuck on board, seafarers imprisoned on board, you may start thinking, gee, that's really bad. In order to help industry, but also journalists, so they can help everybody else, Intermanagers set up Maritime Champions League, which is available on our website for everybody. You can go there, it's difficult to miss. Click on it and you will see names of the companies, places where they take people from and to, and numbers. And I hope you'll be impressed, because some of you may think, okay, what is the scale of the problem? How many of seafarers are actually overdue today with their contracts? So our estimation, and when I say our, I mean the shipping industry estimation, is 10% of all serving seafarers are overdue now. So if we've got 1.5 million seafarers serving, 10% is 150,000. So our website, and I'm not claiming that we've got everybody participating in our Maritime Champions League. You can see that we have changed 20-odd thousand people out of this 150,000. And I would say that we are only scratching the surface. There is a lot of crew changes happening. There was a huge challenge for people in the office to organize that, because a lot of countries do not allow flights. If you take Poland, if you take Ukraine, airspace is closed. But does it mean that Ukrainian or Polish seafarers will not go to sign on or sign off? Of course not. We immediately work out a solution for that. Berlin and Minsk, for example, are being used as a connection. And then we go ahead from there. 10 weeks ago, when I look back now, I can see what we started with, how many problems we had. Visas, passports, ports not being able to accept people going ashore. We did move together with many organizations into sort of emergency mode. And you would like to probably know that every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, there are very high-ranking NGOs and other associations, organizations, administrations meetings, virtual meetings at 1 o'clock UK time, when we are sharing our challenges, solutions, and we are working together in order to overcome all barriers. And so, Kuba, David, that is my...
Kuba, I'm really impressed about the way that the shipping industry has pulled together, but how are we getting buy-in from other organizations, the aviation, the logistics?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. We immediately included them in our stakeholder group, and we have been talking to them as well. And if you think, when I'm talking to the seafarers, obviously a lot of them are complaining that we need to go home now. And those who are at home are saying, oh, I need to go to sea because I'm running out of money. A bit of statistics for you. 90% of all seafarers are employed by the crew managers, members of Intermanager, basically, because we are Ship Managers and Crew Managers Association. And these people, again, around 90% are hired and fired, which means we are paid only when we are at sea. We are not paid when we are at home. So those who are at sea are screaming to go home because they are overdue now. But there is also a big chunk crowd waiting to go to sea because they are running out of money. So we had to get together. We had to impress impress our own people, but we needed to cooperate with border control to explain that seafarers are key workers. And that was very quickly passed through European Commission, for example. We did have to create some sort of a procedures, risk assessment, and they were created under the lead of ICS with cooperation from many other companies, organizations, and it went through IMO. And within 5 weeks, we have now created and sent over for everybody to use protocols and procedures. So shipping companies are encouraged not to reinvent the wheel, but take it for free from websites of Intercargo, Intertanko, ICS, Intermanager, IMO. Use it, guys. These are procedures which have been approved, accepted, worked by stakeholders. Why to shy away?
Thanks, Kuba. So obviously, different ports, different countries, they all take a slightly different approach. What are some of the best practices? What are some of the ports that really have gotten it right, that put the effort into support shipping?
And I would say that European ports were very quick, actually. They understood that without seafarers, there will be no trade. So they allowed green lanes, as it is called. So seafarers are being treated specially. You can go through, no problem. Transit is allowed. If you remember, we had a lot of problems with quarantining, as regular people coming across borders have to quarantine for 2 weeks. We got the status when we could actually transfer seafarers between those borders without quarantining. So that was excellent support. And airports like Amsterdam, Berlin, ports like Antwerp, Rotterdam, airports London, Aberdeen, Milford Haven as a port, all work together with seafarers, making sure that we can get through, no problem. So best practice would be cooperation and working together, listening to each other issues and working together to solve them. And this has been achieved, quite quickly achieved, actually. So very, very happy with that. Over to you, David.
Thanks, Kuba. We're getting some questions in which seem to indicate that there are a lot of mariners listening. Maybe we should launch a poll and just find out how many people in the audience. So
it would be very interesting, David, indeed. How many seafarers and how many people from the office? And I can probably participate as well, I can see.
Right. So just in the next couple of seconds, if you can just click on either yes or no and submit your answer, then we'll be able to share those with you. So I can definitely see that the mariners, there's a strong percentage of mariners in the audience.
Are you surprised, David, by that? We are Nautical Institute. You would probably expect that.
We do, because there's so many mariners, not just the crews themselves, but former mariners that go into ship operations, and it's essential to get there. But one of the courses that we're actually getting more interest in is an introduction to shipping, where more non-mariners are coming into shipping without a real good understanding of some of the issues. Right, I'm just going to close this poll and share it. There you go.
No.
Can you see that, Kuba?
I do, 77%, yeah?
Yeah. So, anyhow, let me...
And what are the questions?
In your opinion, when do you believe that the crew changes will resume normality?
Okay, well, for some companies, and maybe I should start with that because I don't know who's asking. First of all, we had different sectors of the industry. So the most affected sector of industry was obviously cruise ships. So these guys were hugely affected, and it's very difficult for me to answer this kind of question. But on the other scale, we had ferry ships, ferry boats, and the crew changes were almost not affected there. People were coming off and on as they were. Very quickly, offshore industry came to norm, sort of. It's a new norm, but the crew changes are happening. Then we've got vessels which are liners. They do come to the places, and it is much easier for us if the crew is from the vessel which calls at these ports. What do I mean? If you've got Russians in Russia, that's easier to replace than British in Russia. If we've got a British and the vessel calls at British ports, it's easier for us to do the crew change, and so on and so forth. Now, to answer your question, when do I think? I believe everything will start coming back as soon as the flights, the regular flights, resume. And we are now surrounded by very good news, seeing that India is allowing now to fly charter flights. Philippines are thinking of opening the internal flights. Poland is supposed to open internal flights from the 1st of June. So as you can see, I see the light in a tunnel getting bigger and bigger. So I can't put the date, but I can see that it is within probably 3-4 weeks when we will see the proper ease, and probably a month when we will be more or less where we were, maybe 2 months where we are. And one thing we need to remember as well, wherever you are, you've got a different situation. So if you are talking to somebody who lives in UK, his or her perspective angle will be completely different from somebody in Sweden or Germany or Poland, because of different phases COVID is having effect on those countries. So that would be my answer.
Okay, thanks, Kuba. We got a question here from Ivor. He says, "Hello, Kuba. What is in place to ensure the joining crew are healthy when they get on board? Are there any quarantine requirements on board for joiners?"
No. Okay, so there is a big myth about the testing, and it took us a lot of time. People were saying it's simple, test before you leave, test on board, and you're happy. Well, except the tests are not that convincing. So the testing has to be done, obviously, but we have to wait for the results of the tests. And as far as I'm concerned, the good testing requires 2 or 3 tests, and then you get to the level of 99% of faith that there's a really good test. So what is needed from the seafarers, and what we can see as a best practice, seafarers are being asked at home to measure their temperature and keep a log, see whether they've got any symptoms. So that's the very first thing. Then they are being tested, and if the test is okay, they are flying or they are traveling. And then on arrival on board of a ship, social distancing is requested. So on board of a ship, seafarers, the new joiners, are asked not to necessarily hug, existing crew, not to be in very close contact with them to start with, and observe their health for another 14 days. They are being monitored. But statistically, again, we've got very, very, very few positive crew members on board of commercial ships. And you will be really push hard to find any examples when we introduce the COVID on board of a vessel. Why is that? Because generally speaking, seafarers are very healthy when you compare to any other walks of life. We all have our ENG1, or if you call it health certificate, and so on and so forth. So right from the beginning, seafarers were not a target group for COVID patients. And I think we are taking dividends from that.
Thanks, Kuba. There's another, it's more of a comment than a question, but I think you'll appreciate it. Green lanes, very rare in the world. And why is it green? Why is it not called blue? Now, I know, Kuba, you have spent years, more than anybody I know, trying to get governments and industry around the world to recognize mariners as key workers and to have them be whisked through airports and appreciated on the world stage. How are we doing with that?
Well, that's an extremely good question. And I will be very honest with you, because we jumped the bandwagon with the green lanes. Green lanes were created for the truck drivers in Europe. So they could actually be whisked through on the lorry through the borders. And that was created. And then we immediately saw opportunity for us. And we said, hold on a second, if the lorry drivers are key workers, then think who delivers all the stuff lorries have to take to your home. They come from the vessel. So obviously seafarers have to join this queue, if you wish. And that's why we didn't invent anything. We just make sure that seafarers join the same category and they are key workers, and whenever there is any transit or any border crossing or something, seafarers will be treated the same way.
And it's always good to be green. Okay, a question from Peter. What is your opinion with regard to those ship owners who are engaging war clauses for COVID and refusing to pay all crew members when someone on board is diagnosed with coronavirus and that the vessel is not allowed into the port until the infection has been neutralized?
Well, it's a long question, so let me chop this question into parts. First of all, I would absolutely disagree with any owner doing that. And I would also say that if you do have a tangible example of this happening, then get in touch with me immediately, with me or ITF or ICS or Intertank. Now, we have been running a statistic for abandonment of ships. We do have around 50, 60 ships being abandoned every year. And we are being asked now whether we see more and more abandonments. No, we don't. So it's myth. It's not happening, guys. And also, I would say there is either a misunderstanding somewhere or there is this gossip going around. But if you do have an example where the owner has not paid, then please get in touch. I am prepared for that in a way, thanks to David, because I've got a document in front of me which is called ITF Advisory, Crew Changes and Contractual Rights Obligations Guidelines. And I'm more than happy to point you to our website where you can find it, or email me and I will email you this document. This document has been approved, is ILO document, MLC document, if you wish, and you can use it and you should be using it. Therefore, I don't see, if you are asking me whether I'm happy with owners like that, absolutely not happy. And I can tell you no one is. Thank you.
Thanks, Kuba. I know you're passionate about these things. We've got another Peter asking, will we see a backlog of crew availability after the peak of the COVID-19?
No, crew availability, I don't think so. We always had too many crew members available from 2010 and earlier. There's too many of us, guys. You can see that through your salaries. Salaries are not growing, salaries are not coming up. So that means, you know, supply and demand. I know that we got a lot of seafarers waiting to go to sea. When I heard the backlog, I thought that you are talking about the backlog of off-signers. And yes, we do have this, and I'm really working very hard with our colleagues from other organizations and associations not to wait until airlines start flying. So there is a lot of charter flights being considered, executed. Go on our website, as I started with my presentation, and you will see what is already happening, not that we will happen or what we are working on. There is a lot of crew changes already happening, making sure that the backlog is not huge when the airlines come online. This is my answer, David.
Okay, thanks very much, Kuba. Speaking of chartered flights, we have a Trevor out there who I think you and I both know well. And he says, we are trying to get a Filipino and Indonesian home via a chartered flight, but we are struggling to get a landing slot at Manila.
That is correct. Manila had a big backlog, and we had to, well, not me, but Philippines authorities had to close Manila airport for a week to offload those who were quarantining there. Now today, and I've just heard this news before I came to this webinar, that the biggest issue for Philippines always was 400 tests on arrival any particular day. That these tests are must, and they were performed by Red Cross of Philippines. Today I heard, and the number is being increased to 5,000 a day. And only, obviously, you have to wait for the results. And if you are positive, then you were directed to the hospital. And if you are negative, then you were quarantining for 2 weeks. That put a lot of strain on Manila hotels, hostels, any facilities, because these people had to wait 2 weeks before they were allowed to go to provinces. So now we had a political issue in Manila as well, sorry, in Philippines. A lot of provinces did not like to receive seafarers coming back home. They were just afraid that this guy is coming from the world and he is probably coming with a COVID. So a lot of educational work had to go and a lot of support. Obviously, there are no flights, internal flights in Manila. Therefore, our members set up ferry service from Manila to provinces. And I believe we've been running that quite successfully now for 3 weeks, taking returning Filipinos from Manila to their homes. And we are increasing this ferry service now as we speak.
Okay, thanks, Kuba. We got another question from Karen. Have there been any crew change solutions for seafarers from the Middle East, Southeastern Asia, and Africa sailing in other parts of the world as their airports are still closed?
Yes, again, go to our Maritime Champions League. You will see which companies and which directions they were flying people. Yes, we do have a problem in Qatar and Dubai and Fujairah, but it's not, I'm using the English word problem, it's an issue. It can be solved and we have been successfully replacing people. We have to admit that India locking down completely was not very helpful for seafarers. But today's news is that Indian government is looking at opening. We are, as we speak, we are setting up charter flights, and we were able to do the crew changes in India for Indians. So your question was very broad, and I'm trying to answer using examples. Obviously, if you are Emiratis or Qataris, you were able to go home from Ras Laffan, Fujairah, and so on and so forth. So changes from within your own country were executed. Changes of, let's say, Europeans from Fujairah, also possible, but there is an interesting dynamics here, and let me explain that. Filipinos were far better flying from Fujairah than Europeans, for example. And why is that? I investigated. Well, the Filipinos are being looked after Filipino crew managers from Philippines who know how to get in touch with Philippines embassy in Dubai. So the same in Europe is not happening because you can have a Romanian officer looked after by a Greek individual in Cyprus who is not that conversant with Romanian embassy in Emirates. This has to be overcome. And that's why we are talking to European Commission to make sure that European countries' embassy diplomatic staff is aware of seafarers trying to disembark in different countries where immigration in these countries needs their support. That's my very convoluted answer. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Kuba. We've got another question from Nish in Sri Lanka. He says, what do you think about the paying of wages during quarantine period after signing off?
Again, ITF has, I'm just reaching out to get this document. ITF is very clear, and I'm saying ITF, you don't need to be ITF member or something, because that was the document which was circulated and is available for everyone. And there are 7 scenarios. So during quarantining, you are paid basic salary, accommodation and food provided by the company. Again, Nish, if you want the document or something, either Google it or drop me an email and I will be more than happy to send this to you.
Okay, thanks, Kuba. Now, I know, Kuba, before we put this together, you were a little bit curious about the type of employment our audience might have. So I'm just going to launch another quickie poll.
Please.
Right, so if you could all just tick one of the options, please.
And David, I have been talking a lot, but what about Nautical Institute? How did you guys find COVID, and where do you see the shift now? Where the members of members of Nautical Institute seeking advice from Nautical Institute? What can we do in Nautical Institute to support crews, please?
Okay, let me just run this poll a little bit longer. Right. So, there we go, Kuba. So
very interesting.
A lot of your ship management people are there.
That's good. That's
a
good.
lot of seafarers, which we like to see.
Good, excellent. And thank you the others who found Nautical Institute and manager, because you're amazing. Then you know about us.
Yes, and just to let you know, this is a very popular talk. We had over 350 registrants, Kuba. So well done. Your reputation precedes.
What have you been doing during the COVID? Nautical Institute. How do you guys support seafarers?
Okay. Well, obviously, our members are individual personal members, and they're all very concerned of it. We have seafarers, we have people working ashore, and one of the nice things is that when some of the seafarers did have trouble, I mean, we had one case the other day where we had a seafarer that couldn't get back to South Africa, and we were able to utilize some of our members in South Africa to talk to government people, and we managed to sort something out with that. But one of the interesting byproducts of all this is that people have been using the time, whether they've been stranded on board or stranded ashore, to keep up their learning. And we can see that coming out of the virus situation, there is going to be a huge amount of disruption, and therefore members are starting to sharpen up their skills, learn more. They're buying books, they're booking short courses. We've made a huge number of free resources to them. We've got our Navigator magazine, which is very popular, and if you download that handout, there are links to all these things. And so the Navigator is going out, and all the back copies are available. We've got our monthly journal Seaways, which goes out to all of our members, but we've also put previous years, many of the issues from previous years available for free. So if people want to read those for professional development, they can. Like I said, we've got books, we've got the webinars, and the Nautical Institute, being a professional body, is all about professional development. And you know, it's nice to see people using this time of disruption to really ramp up their own education, so that they can, post-COVID, they can be more effective in what they do, whether it's afloat or ashore.
Thanks for that. Interesting.
So I've got another question from R. Stone, who's one of our members, and he says, "Is the P&I Club for merchant seafarers, will they help seafarers once diagnosed with COVID-19?"
Well, yes, the quick answer is yes, indeed. But that depends on the level. And as I said at the very beginning, I believe that we haven't got that many cases where we were tested positive. Therefore, I don't even know at the moment, personally, I don't know. And I'm thinking, because I immediately thought about another issue we do have, and P&I clubs are very much involved. It's the medical assistance needed now in COVID times. So very recently, we had a situation in Japan where nobody wants to see a dentist. None of the dentists wants to see a seafarer, and he's suffering. Agent was trying 10 different dentists, making sure that actually somebody would see this particular seafarer, and nobody wants that. And that is an issue for us, and P&I clubs are trying with the correspondents actually to assist us. We do have some issues. People are getting sick, as every day we would get sick, and it's nothing to do with COVID. And that is proving very difficult actually to send seafarers to see the doctor, or another way around. We have come up with very good system where you can actually call and get the remote assistance from the doctors, but it's not the same, and not always. So that's involvement of P&I clubs, as I can see now. But as far as COVID-19 situations, I'm sorry, I don't have any example offhand.
Okay, thanks, Kuba. Captain Philip has written in a question, and he says, are we not looking into the future to be more of a contactless competency examinations on the e-platforms? Has not this pandemic hastened the development of MAS? MAS being maritime autonomous surface ships as defined by the IMO.
I'm sorry, I can't help myself, but I have to tell you that, and you heard it, I know you heard, that the most autonomous ships we ever had were 200 years ago, when the vessel set off for 2 years and was completely autonomous, never had anything from the office, was not on a short strings of pulls and everything. These were autonomous ships to me. Now, what you are talking about is the remote control ship, I suppose, or completely unmanned ship. I don't know. I don't see it that way at all. What I see, and I would love to see, is more uptake on single window projects, for example, where we do not have to have hundreds of people visiting my ship when I'm calling at port. Why do I need to see immigration, customs, and everybody else coming on board? Can't we just have it as we do at the moment? Send one email with crew list, with everything, and trust me, believe me, why do you checked once on arrival to any port in France? Why do I have to be re-inspected in Belgium and then re-inspected again in UK and then re-inspected again in Germany? Why? What has changed? Why don't we trust shipping? Well, while we can trust lorry driver who doesn't require all this documentation and everything. So in this respect, I believe technology can help and should help. I think there is a lot of redundant tasks which we are asking seafarers to do, victualling accounting, for example, beyond me, why the master is doing that. Another one would be paying wages. Why do we have to do the payroll on board of a ship? But we are very happy to go completely unmanned, but we haven't done all those little things. So my answer is, I think technology is needed. COVID-19 might have some positives for us because it proved that it does work and it can be improved even further. But whether we will see unmanned ships, I don't think so. I can't see this happening. I might be wrong, but.
So Nautical Institute, we've done a lot of work in this area, actually. When MAS was first introduced at IMO, I know Kuba, you're represented at IMO, as are we. And one of our early interventions was we had 3 concerns. The first concern was that everybody played by the call regs. It shouldn't matter whether you're manned or unmanned. The rule should be same for both, and you should be able to expect that. The second, and probably the most, the biggest concern that we have, is that we recognize that our current soulless ship fleet of 60 to 70,000 ships has been designed to be operated by people, and that is unlikely to change drastically. The business case for totally transforming a ship that has manual moorings, that has internal combustion engines, you know, all of that sort of stuff, to convert that to an unmanned ship, we don't see that happening. But we do know that there's a lot of autonomous systems coming on board ship, and you know, all you have to do is to look at an engine room, control room, a cargo control room, or the bridge to see how much use of autonomous systems there is. And some of it is marvelous. You know, being able to monitor cargo and spaces, unmanned spaces on the ship, give you a real sense of security, knowing that those systems are constantly being monitored. The use of vectors, when you come into an anchorage, having your position in real time while you can still stand on the bridge looking out the window, is fantastic. So our real concern is, how do we get people and machines to work well together? And there was an article that we published in March of this year talking about it. We surveyed a lot of mariners about it, and essentially most mariners are fairly pragmatic. Like you said, they do recognize that there are huge potential for improvement using technology. Why do we still use written logbooks when everything's being recorded? The amount that technology can be used to, reduce fatigue, reduce stress on board, help efficiency. The new use of tools like LiDAR and optical sensing will give the mariner, if done right, a better situational awareness. It'll be better at picking up small targets. It'll be better at, being able to do weather routing and understand the tides and the currents and the efficiencies of the ship. So there's a huge amount there. But getting that balance right of how humans work, what our members, probably their greatest fear was having an autonomous system where without any notice, it would just run an alarm saying, I give up, it's over to you. And you're out of the loop. You don't have your situational awareness. You might not even be on the bridge or in the engine room. You got to scramble down there and try to figure out what the heck is going wrong. And that we can't have. And so Nautical Institute is working not only at the IMO, but we're working very much with industry, with manufacturers. We had a very good workshop with CIRM, the equipment manufacturers, last year on human-centered design. How do you, understand what the humans want rather than just what the engineers think is good and is practical. So Kuba, sorry, you were going to jump in, but I'm just on.
Yeah, what I wanted to add is, you see, we started because this webinar is supposed to be about our seafarers. Okay, we dominated this webinar so far with crew changes because it's so topical, and COVID-19 obviously imposed that on us. But when you started talking about fatigue, for example, I have to plug in Intermanager Marta project. When you are talking about remote control and remote inspections, for example, another big project of Intermanager, deaths in enclosed spaces, and so on and so forth. We've got another issue with technology called lifeboats, where allegedly we've got such a good technology, then we are starting thinking of vessels without people. But we still haven't figured out how to do the good lifeboats. You may say, oh, if the ships are completely unmanned, we don't need any lifeboats. Yes, indeed. But it's a long way to go there. And I suppose there is always somebody on board of a ship to do the maintenance, which we have completely forgotten. Then 150 or 250 million dollars asset is not going to be maintained only in dry dock. There's far too many technology on board, and we definitely need human beings. So I'm quite confident that, guys, rest assured, we seafarers have a long way to go. That's my message, I suppose.
Thanks, Kuba. I could speak to you all day, and we have spent many days talking over the years. But I am cognizant of the time, and I don't want to press people too much. The final question really is, with all the experience we've gained through the pandemic, what can we do to make the industry more resilient to protecting the seafarers, to assisting the seafarers, based on what we've learned in the last few months?
Well, I'm hoping then we will have a time to reflect, and then we can see which of our emergency procedures, risk assessments, mitigating factors did work and which did not work. And we will learn a lesson from that. I am actually looking at this glass half full in a way that I can afford to sit in a meeting every Tuesday with other parts of our life and look at other industries. And guys, I can tell you, they are looking at us and envious. They are jealous the way we have actually reacted, the way we have been doing things, because we haven't heard of any ship except cruise industry. I take it, cruise industry completely collapsed. And in my opinion, because they were not very prepared for that. And that's, proof in a pudding. You can't say that they were very well prepared when we cannot disembark passengers, we cannot disembark crews. not the topic for today's discussion, but the rest of the ships have not stopped. Every business is going around the way it should be. And if you compare us with any other walks of life, then we have passed the exam pretty well, in my opinion. And we should be proud of what we have done. And we have done it because our people were more or less prepared for that. It's very interesting, the discussions we are having now about crew changes, somebody being overdue by 1 month. And I have to defend this, saying it doesn't matter whether you are extended by 1 month, 2 months, or 2 hours. What is important is your expectation. If you go on board of a ship with a contract saying 6 months, then you want to be relieved after 6 months. If you go on board with contract 6 weeks, you want to be relieved, and there is nothing wrong with this expectation. Therefore, I think it's a huge thank you to all of us seafarers who understood that there is a situation now. Then some of us had to extend for 30 days. Some of us are getting now into 60 days extension contract. And rest assured, those ashore are working their socks off to make sure that you will go home. And please, please, please do not speculate and don't pass the gossip that companies are now making money because they are not replacing us. Then the companies, the owners are making huge savings because the crews are not being replaced. No, guys, it's a huge headache. Headache because we know about the fatigue, we know about the low morale, and so on and so forth. And if you are ever hearing any stories like we hear a lot from the press, please challenge that and say, actually, do you physically know anyone who hasn't been relieved, who hasn't been this, and that? And as we pointed out today, if you've got a situation when somebody was really not paid or abused, you know your rights, reach out, tell us about that. David, over to you.
Thanks, Kuba. And I think that's a good and positive note to end on. And we are going to have to end here. So I'm sorry about that. Kuba, you were fantastic as usual. You know, your passion and energy has really helped shape shipping over the last years. And we're very pleased that you're such a supporter of the Nautical Institute, and we collaborate so well together because whether you're a ship manager, whether you're a professional body, it's all about helping the people, and that's what we're doing. So, yeah,
thank you.
My pleasure. So, just again, back to a little bit of housekeeping. This chat has been recorded and will be on our YouTube channel, and anybody who's registered will get a link to that, or you can just go onto the YouTube and Google or go onto YouTube and search for Nautical Institute, and you'll see this and many other webinars that we've been doing. You will, in about an hour or so, receive a thank you email with a CPD certificate attached. So if you would like that, that's on its way. And again, thank you so much, Kuba, for taking your time and everything that you've done. And I wish all the attendees well and to stay safe. Just a final note, we have had so many questions. I mean, they've been hundreds of questions that we just haven't been able to get to. So I do apologize if we haven't answered your specific question. A lot of the questions are or will be addressed by the documentation that Kuba has mentioned. So go to the ITF website, go to the Intermanager website, look at the IMO documentation. A lot of the answers will be in there. Kuba has given his email address there. The email address for the Nautical Institute is on the slide, so feel free to contact us. You will, as I close the meeting, there'll be a little questionnaire that I really appreciate if you could take the time for. It won't take more than a minute or two. And thank you, and safe travels to everyone. Goodbye.
Cheerio, guys. Thank you.